Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jessica. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. For those who may not know, I have a almost 4-year-old daughter whose name is Violet, and I have a 1-year-old son whose name is Kai, and he just turned 1 like a week ago. So this is going to be my labor and delivery story with him. Just to give you like a little background story, so I had my daughter Violet in 2015 and she was born via C-section, and the reason for that wasn't an emergency. It wasn't anything other than my doctor recommended it for me. He said that she was going to be a very large baby, like over 9 pounds. So I didn't fight it. I just went ahead and I said, okay, whatever you say, you know, I'll do. Also, I think the fact that like my mom and like my aunt and like women close to me have had C-sections in the past, that kind of made me feel like, well, if they could do it, so can I. It's no big deal. Like, you know, I didn't really understand the severity of a C-section. Looking back, I was just so terrified of the thought of having a baby. Like the thought of a baby, like me pushing out a baby was just like, there's no way that I could do that, you know? So I think fear really stopped me from even trying the first time around. I was like, okay, well, whatever. It's actually better that the doctor asked me if I wanted a C-section, because that just bypasses the trying part and just goes for like the full out here C-section, you know what I mean? My due date with her was April 9th. And I was supposed to have her, you know, I was supposed to schedule my C-section within that week. So she was born on March 31st via C-section. She was super healthy, and you know, my surgery went really good. Like apparently my doctor was like a top C-section doctor that like even my incision looks like it's kind of like not even there anymore. Like the incision is like paper thin. It's kind of crazy like how amazing he was. I just didn't need like any pain medication. Like I felt fine after, you know, whatever they had given me the day of the surgery. After that wore off, I didn't take anything, no ibuprofen, nothing. Like I was just on my own. I remember waking up from the surgery and being like fully there after like all the drugs wore off, and I just looked at my stomach and I was like, what like what did I just do? I was just like so shocked, so scared, like so many emotions. Yeah, it was a lot to like process. I was like 22 years old at the time. I was so young, like I was such a baby. But you know, experience is your best teacher, and I feel like had I not gone through that experience the first time, I would not have been able to do it like how I did this time. So with all that being said, you know, she was healthy, she was gorgeous, everything was good. She latched on, we were breastfeeding. I mean, breastfeeding was like the biggest pain. Like it was such a challenge, but I was just so determined to like be able to nurse my child. So, you know, breastfeeding was such a challenge, but definitely after like the second week, it got a lot easier. I would pump and nurse, and like, you know, my boobs were like super messed up. Like my nipples were like scabbed up. It was really bad. So yeah, so that was my experience the first time. You know, health wise we were all good, we were all healthy, but it was just, you know, the C-section was a lot emotionally for me, and I couldn't even look at her like birth pictures until like months later. Like I literally I would just cry when I would try to look at the photos. Like I would just get so sad. It was a great moment because she was born and she was like safe and healthy, but at the same time it was just a very like, I don't know, it was just a very hard moment for me too. So yeah, so that was like my first experience with my daughter Violet, and obviously like I freaking love her. She was my firstborn and my baby girl. So got pregnant 2 years later. No, how many years later? Yeah, so I found out I was pregnant in June of 2017, and as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I was like, this baby is gonna be born like the right way. Not saying that C-sections are the wrong way. Just in my experience, I feel like I shouldn't have opted for the C-section. That's all I'm saying. Like if whatever you want to have in your birth, it's like the more power to you. I'm not here to like mom shame or say don't do this, don't do that, do it this way, do it that way. No, like I'm just sharing my experience with you. But when I found out that I was pregnant with Kai, I just knew. I was like, I do not want a C-section. Like I can't emotionally go through that again. Like it was just so hard for me. So when I found out that I was pregnant, I knew. I was like, I want to have a natural vaginal delivery. Like that's what I want, you know, from day one. And I had heard about VBACs and like, you know, here and there, but I never really knew what it was. So I started researching and I was like, wow, like I want this, like I want a VBAC, and you know, like I think that I can do this. So then I called my OBGYN and he was like, no, I'm not doing a VBAC. He's like, I don't do VBACs. And I was just like, what? I was like, how do you not do VBACs? So he told me that he wouldn't do it for me, that the risk is way too big, and that no, he didn't want to do a VBAC, you know, he doesn't do VBAC. So then I said, okay, you know, that's fine, thank you so much, and like I'll just find my own doctor, I'll do my own research, I'll figure it out. So then I started doing my research, and one of my really good friends actually recommended the place that she had her babies at, and she had them through a midwife. So immediately I was like, I need to call them, I need to get in with them. So then I scheduled my appointment, met with them. They were just like, yeah, you know, like a VBAC, yeah, of course, like why not? They were so like, VBAC, you know. That was really when they explained to me how a lot of doctors are just trained to not want to do VBACs. It's like a 1% uterine rupture rate, and that is like what terrifies them, because yeah, uterine rupture is a huge deal, it is life-threatening, but the chances of that happening to a person having a VBAC are not that high. And I just knew in my heart, like I knew that I would be okay. So I didn't even, like the risk didn't really make me worried or feel like I shouldn't be doing this. Of course, when I talked to the midwives, they did like a full workup, you know, my previous pregnancy history, my health history, like blood work, the whole thing. So they were like, yeah, you know, like we don't see why not. And one of the head midwives, she actually had a VBAC also, so I just felt like very connected with them, and you know, like the journey that I was gonna go on, like I just knew that they would have my back. So this time around, I definitely carried lower with Kai. I carried lower and smaller. My stomach was like kind of like a basketball. It was much tinier, even though I gained the same amount of weight as I did with Violet. But with Violet, I was like so wide, like my hips, like everything, I was just huge. So I had a great pregnancy with him. It was around the 11th week we had the test, the genetic screening that checks for Down syndrome or like any genetic mutations or, you know, that stuff. So then we did that at 11 weeks. I literally didn't think anything of it because with Violet, like everything was, you know, fine. So then we do that, and then we get like a call. I get a call like a few days later. She leaves me a voicemail. She tells me that my test came back, it came out positive for Down syndrome, and that if I wanted to, like I can see a genetic specialist. She was definitely like, don't worry, you know, just trying to like not make me freak out over a voicemail, because obviously when you hear that, like your heart kind of sinks and you're just like, what, you know. So that definitely, I definitely was caught off guard when I heard that voicemail. I was like, what? Like that's insane. Like, what are you talking about? So I scheduled to see the genetic counselor, and she basically just broke it down to me, like the steps that we needed to take to see, you know, if the baby did have Down syndrome or not. First option she gave me was doing the NIPT test, which is basically a non-invasive blood draw that would test the DNA in the baby and also gives you a gender. And she was like, if that, you know, that test comes out positive that he does have Down syndrome, then we can do an amniocentesis, which is when they insert like the it's like a huge needle into your stomach through the amniotic sac into like the fluid of the baby, the amniotic fluid. They test that is like 100% accurate. But the thing with that, it is invasive, so you know, you could miscarry your baby if, God forbid, something went wrong. So then I opted for the NIPT test. I did that, and then a few days later she called me and she was like, oh, you know, good news, like I forget the exact amount that she told me, like 1 in 30,000, 1 in something like that. It came back negative, so there is no Down syndrome in the baby. And yeah, Kai ended up being perfectly healthy. He didn't have any type of, you know, Down syndrome, nothing at all. Like, thank God he was perfectly fine. So my due date with Kai was February 9th. The day of February 9th, I woke up and I started getting cramps. Maybe today is the day. So I got super excited and I was like, yeah, like it's gonna happen today, you know, like we'll see how it progresses. But at the same time, I also knew that it was kind of too good to be true. Like, there was no way he was coming on his due date. So that day I treated it like any other day. I went about my day. I, you know, went to the mall with Violet. My mom and sister and I went to lunch. Everything was okay. Nothing happened that day. Saturday rolled around. I definitely had way stronger contractions, but at the same time, nothing to get me to the hospital, because my midwives already told me, they kind of like prepped me for it, and they're like, you know what, like when you know it's time, you will not be able to talk, you know, you won't be able to do much of anything other than concentrate on these contractions. And until you feel like that, then stay home, labor at home. You don't want to come into the hospital, get put on a clog. You don't want to get, you know, rushed and like, oh, you're not progressing, you know, we're gonna have to give you Pitocin and induce your labor. They're like, you don't want that, you know, especially if you're trying to go like all natural VBAC, like no intervention, like labor as long as you possibly can at home. So that was exactly what I did. I labored as possibly long as I could at home. Nothing happened Saturday. It was like a total fail. It was just like any other day. I just had contractions on and off all day long. I never labored the first time, so it was all very new to me, even though it was still like my second baby. It was very much like my first time being in labor. So then Sunday rolls around, and at that point I was kind of impatient already. I was like, this has been like already the third day of like contractions, and like I don't know what's happening. So I called my mom and my sister. They came and they picked Violet up, and I was just such a mess. I was like crying nonstop. Like the anxiety that I had between leaving Violet was insane. That day, that Sunday, February 11th, Jonathan and I ended up going to the hospital around like 6 o'clock because the contractions were much stronger. So we went and they checked me out. They're like, you're 3 centimeters, like good job, you're doing great, but go home. And I was just like, wow, oh my God. I was like, fine, whatever, like we'll go home. After we left the hospital, Jay and I went to dinner. It was just him and I was literally sitting through dinner with like contractions, like the kind where I actually had to like practice my breathing and like really focus, you know. So we're just sitting through dinner, and I'm just like, I wonder if anybody can tell like that I'm literally in labor right now. And the midwife was like, you know, go home, rest, you know, do whatever you gotta do. But by tomorrow morning, like you'll be back, like it'll be time. And I was like, okay, thank God, because I cannot go one more day. I was so tired. I didn't sleep through the night. Like I remember all I wanted to do was just like lay down and like cuddle with Jay. I just wanted to like be spooned, and like it didn't work because we tried, and like the contractions would kick in, and I was just so, you know, I didn't want to be laying down. Like I wanted to lay down, but I couldn't. So I ended up getting in my tub, filling up the water, and I was in the tub for like the whole night. I had some like lavender Epsom salt, and I was just like relaxing. I put some music on. I don't remember the actual name of the album or anything, but I'll link it down below, like what really helped me during like my laboring process. What really helped me labor at home for as long as I did was definitely hypnobirthing and learning it. I did get this book. It's called the Hypnobirthing Book by Catherine Graves. This one right over here. Read it like front to back, highlighted things. Like I was very into this book. This was like all I was reading, and it did help me. Hypnobirthing was like my go-to for having a natural labor, definitely. And then this other book, Having a Baby Naturally, one of my girlfriends gave it to me. The same friend, Jessica, shout out to you, girl, the one who told me about the midwives. So yeah, these two books were like, and of course everything else like on the internet, like I did read a lot of stuff, but this hypnobirthing book to me was really, really helpful. So with hypnobirthing, they do a lot of exercises to relax you, because having a natural labor is all about being relaxed. What I learned in this book is the moment that you allow fear in, that's when your entire body tenses up. You want to be as relaxed as possible for the muscle to do its own thing and kind of basically help push the baby down on its own. When your body is afraid, when it's in fear mode, you basically stop producing oxytocin, which is the hormone that gets you going into labor. So it's basically all about low-level stress, no stress at all, being in the calmest mindset you possibly can, training your mind into being in that calm mindset. I feel like if you don't learn hypnobirthing, you don't know how to relax, you know. So this was such a good tool for me to actually learn that like relaxation and just to not really stress, to just trust your body and trust the process. Really, that was definitely like my mantra, just trust the process. I was on Pinterest like every day looking up, you know, mantras and just affirmations that would really resonate with me and that made me feel empowered in my decision. Because a lot of the times, you know, when you do share like, oh, I'm gonna have a VBAC or whatever, so many people can give you like their negative opinions, and you know, it messes with you. It definitely does. If you're a mom who is trying to have a VBAC, get this book, you guys. Like, I'll link it down below. It really helped me so much. And if I have another baby, best believe I'm reading this again, like from front to back, all over again, because yeah, it's just like, it makes you feel so freaking empowered, like just knowing that like I can do this, you know. So finally, it's the next day after all night laboring in the bathtub. So I knew that morning, or it was around 8 o'clock. I didn't even sleep. Like, I was just in the bathtub, like relaxing all night long, going through the contractions. Around 8 o'clock, I remember my stomach started to feel like tight and I didn't feel as much movement. So that started to worry me. I called the midwives and they were like, okay, you know, come back in. Let's see like how much you've progressed. So, you know, we got ready. We drove to the hospital, but not before stopping at Whole Foods and getting a smoothie, because I was like addicted to smoothies at the time. And I obviously wasn't in labor where I was like gonna have a baby in the car, but I was definitely like holding on, and I had the seat warmers because it was just really helping like my back. So yeah, so we get to the hospital, they check me and they're like, oh, like, wow, they're like, you're 6 centimeters, like, good job. And I was just like, fuck yeah. I was like, okay, cool, like, let's go. I was so happy when they told me 6 centimeters, because that just sounded like I need to be 10, I'm 6, so like I only need 4 more, you know. So I was like very confident at that point. I was like, yes, like the baby's gonna be born today, like this is good, you know. And I was still like in a very calm state. Like, I was not like, you know, like panting and just kind of what you see in movies. Like, I wasn't like that. And that's really what I feel like seeing people like that in movies is what scares women out of even trying to have a natural labor, because they think that that's what they're gonna be. They're gonna be this like frantic, screaming, scared, hot mess. And it's like, you don't have to be that. Like, you will not be that. So I get admitted into the hospital. They check me in, you know, I get my room. It was a beautiful room. It was just me and Jonathan. I told my mom and, you know, my family, I was like, you guys have Violet, you guys keep her. Like, in the state of mind that I'm in right now, let me work through this, you know what I mean? So it was just Jay and I in the room. He was very helpful to me. He was definitely being a trooper and just doing whatever I needed him to do to get me through this. So that was around 10 o'clock when I got admitted, and then around 2 p.m. that's when they started, okay, like, let's see, you know, how much you've progressed. So they checked me and I hadn't progressed at all, like nothing. So they were like, okay. So then there was talks. This is when the talks started about, okay, well, do you want to get induced? Do you want Pitocin? Or do you want us to break your water? And as soon as I heard like break your water, Pitocin, I was like, I don't want anything. Like, I want this to be like as natural as possible. I want my water to break. So long story short, I needed to get my water broken. The way the midwife explained it to me, his head was basically like bouncing on the amniotic sac. Like, it was just, he would come down and like bounce back up. Like, he wasn't breaking the bag. So they broke it for me around 2 p.m, like 2:30. And then after that, it was like contractions were coming on. And that from like 2 and on, for like the next 5 hours, I was literally like, those were the most intense contractions. And it was very intense, like very intense. I tried to walk a lot. I was walking, standing up, swaying. I would go sit on the toilet because being in that position like really made me feel more comfortable. Jay was just standing and I would like grab him by the waist and like recline on him and like sway my hips back and forth. That was like a really comfortable position too. Or just on the rocking chair, like rocking back and forth. So I was just trying to, you know, get through the contractions. So I think, I'm not really too accurate of the time, but I think it was around like 6 o'clock, I think, is when things started getting like really intense, where I started feeling like oh my god, I need to push, like I need to push. And the best way that I can explain it is like, you have to use the bathroom, like, and you just cannot wait, like you have to go right then and there. So I remember telling my mom, like, it just felt like I needed to take a poop, like I needed to poop. It was just, that's just the best explanation that I can give. And the midwife was like, you can't push yet, like if you do, you're gonna get you're gonna tear your cervix, so don't push, like you're not ready to push. At that point, I was like, I have to push, like I need to push now. And they're like, you're not ready to push, like you need to work through it and like get it together, basically. Obviously they didn't talk to me like that, but in my head I was like, okay, like if I'm not ready, I'm not ready. But it was like I needed to push. So I was like, you need to check me again and make sure that like I'm really not ready, because I have, like, this has to happen right now. So they checked me. They're like, okay, well, let's check you, like crazier things have happened. So then they checked me and they're like, oh my gosh, she's ready. After that, the midwife came in and, you know, they like put your legs up and they're like, okay, like whenever you feel a contraction, you know, you can push. At this point, I was just so exhausted. I was like, okay, like let's freaking do this. He was born at 7:02 p.m. So I pushed for about like 30-40 minutes, and like I said, I was exhausted. I was like if he didn't come out when he did, I literally would have just, I think I would have passed out. Like I was so tired. And I just remember my mom was there at my bedside, and she just kept like rubbing my head, and I was like, Mom, I was like, stop, you're gonna make me fall asleep. I'm like, stop. Like I just got into this really like aggressive and like powerful state of mind, I guess you can call it. I just remember getting so tired at the end. I was like, I can't, like I'm so tired. So they were kind of like guiding me through the pushing, because they can like read the monitor from the contractions. So when he was born, I was just crying and I was like, oh my god, like I did it. I was so happy, so freaking happy, and like so proud of myself. Like I couldn't believe that like this little baby was just born, and like I just literally pushed him out through my vagina all by myself. Like wow, I was super happy. I did like notice a commotion of like the doctor coming in and just checking out to see like if everything was okay, but I was trying to block it out because I didn't want that to like stress me out. Plus I just had like my brand new baby on my chest. Like I was so happy. Shortly after, you know, after like they stitched me from like my tear and everything was all good and whatnot, then they let my family come in. Violet came in and she met Kai. So she met him like maybe 15-20 minutes after he was born, like very, very fast. I just felt very tired and sore. Like my back was sore, my shoulders were sore, like my body was just so sore. Like I just had a baby, you know. So I was very I feel like I was very fragile at the moment, but you know, I did have some sleep afterwards, and they like moved us into like our other room around like 2 in the morning. The breastfeeding part of everything was so much easier this time because I was like fully awake and alert, and I felt like, you know, I wasn't drugged up, I wasn't like very foggy in the mind. So I went straight to work with him. He latched on. We're still nursing, and I plan to go into like 1.5 years, but we'll see. Like there's really no pressure on that. I had such a good experience when it came to my second labor, and I'm just so glad that I was able to do it. And if you are a mom who wants to have a VBAC, like I said, definitely fight for it. If you are a candidate, I don't see why not. And if you are a first-time mom trying to have a natural labor, definitely pick up this hypnobirthing book that I told you guys about. It helped me so much, and I don't really know like what would have happened had I not read it. But yeah, it put me in the mindset of like, you can do this. This is how you're meant to have a baby, and this will work for you. Just trust the process, trust your body, definitely fight for it. Find a doctor who is going to be on your side. That is like the most important thing in my book, I feel. Especially after having an OBGYN who was so against a VBAC, I definitely feel like having the right team behind you is key for you to even have a VBAC, because if the doctor is not with it, then it's not happening. Just don't be scared, you guys. That's like my biggest piece of advice, is like, don't let fear stop you. I was scared out of my mind the first time, and I really let fear stop me from trying to have a regular vaginal birth. And if it's really what you want, then you have to fight for it, you guys. You have to fight for the things that you want. I labored for like 3 whole days, but he was so worth it. After that, I just felt so empowered and so like, wow, I am the biggest badass. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too long, but thank you so much for sticking around and hearing it. If you have any questions, comment down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. So that's gonna be it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.